What's up everybody, it's your boy Nate. When I was first trying to become a VFX artist, I would spend hours on hours just watching After Effects tutorials on YouTube, trying to hone in my skills good enough so that I can convince my friends and family that I'm not just wasting my time online and that I'm actually good enough to make this a career and get hired on a set, and also, hey, look super cool. Well, back then this movie called Jumper came out and I got to thinking, yo, wouldn't it be super sick if I could teleport just like they did in that movie? I mean, shoot, Harry Potter does it, Jumper does it, even Star Trek has some teleporting VFX, so this has to be something that all the pros know how to do because they make it look so freaking cool. And guess what? Teleporting VFX is actually one of the most popular and one of the most useful VFX to learn when starting out. So by learning this skill, not only would I look cool, but I would no longer be a professional loser. Anyways, that's why we're going to be learning today how to teleport using the magic of our minds and a little tool called After Effects. Okay, and that's how you do the teleportation effect. Hopefully I didn't just stop recording when I picked up the camera. So first step of teleporting is actually shooting some footage that is going to be useful to edit. This VFX shot can be done just about anywhere. It can be done indoors, outdoors, in a kitchen, on a field. But the key ingredient for this shot is having a super stable camera. So that's why we should go about this by using a tripod. I was a little bit stupid and I forgot my tripod. So I ended up just putting my camera on this fire hydrant outside, which, you know, kind of did the job good enough. 3 things to keep in mind is that we're going to need a stable shot, our camera locked down, no movement whatsoever, and then we also want to be able to film something called a clean plate, which I found out just means it's a shot without anybody inside of it. So the way that we're going to do this is by first setting up the camera, making sure it's stable, and then pressing record on our camera before anyone has ever entered the scene. For this thing, of course, I got to be using me as the talent because the person teleporting always looks super cool and I want to look super freaking cool. Next thing I did was get on this hill and pretend like I was walking down it, and then I overacted as if I'm getting sucked into some sort of portal. Key ingredient here is to overact this because otherwise it's just gonna look like you're just walking and just cut the footage, but you actually want it to look like some things are hidden. Next thing I did was walk a little bit further down this hill and then jump and leap out as if I'm coming out of some sort of portal. In fact, I overacted this so much that I almost fell over, but I played it off and I made it look cool, and then I just went ahead and grabbed that camera and lifted it up so that people know that I'm not in front of some sort of green screen. So yeah, if you guys try to do this effect and you guys really leap out and go for it, make sure that if you stumble, you just roll with the punches because G's never fall down, they just keep going. Overall, I think this was a nice take and it's actually going to be pretty easy to go ahead and port this into After Effects for some of those magical finishing touches, which I guess is why they call this program After Effects, huh? Okay. The very first step, if you guys are brand new to After Effects, is to make something called a brand new composition. Pretty much a composition is this window that you're seeing here, and every single thing from the footage and the VFX is going to be showing inside of this window, and then down below is going to be the timeline where we're going to have all of our different layers. You can kind of think of this like Photoshop, how you got a bunch of different layers and they stack from top to bottom. Yeah, it's the same concept. It's just going to be doing this in video form. If this stuff makes no sense to you, don't even worry about it because guess what? All of this is going to make sense in the next few minutes once we start getting into making this effect. So bam, let's make a brand new composition. We're going to time this out to 10 seconds because that seems like enough time. Next thing I want to do is keep this nice and tidy, so I'm going to rename this composition teleportation effect, and then we're going to go ahead and slam OK. Next thing to do is to drag in that footage from the project panel or from whatever folder into our timeline, and if it doesn't fit just right, we want to go ahead and resize it by right clicking on it and clicking all the way up to transform and then fit to comp width or fit to comp height depending on your shot. Now we ended up shooting a bunch of extra footage, so let me go ahead and just drag over this footage somewhere so that the timing looks just about right for this effect. Now super important, I want to pause at the moment in which we are about to jump and leap. This is going to be a cut, and the way that I'm going to do this is by pressing Ctrl-Shift-D, which is going to split that clip right there in the timeline, so we get one clip in the beginning and then one clip right after our cursor. Next thing we want to do is close in that gap that we have here and match it up right to that split so it's looking nice, and then let's go ahead and duplicate this same footage layer, drag it all the way down below, and we want to find our clean plate that we took earlier, which should either be at the beginning or the end of the shot, depending on how you shot this. This way we can play around with the clip that we have for the beginning transition and then the end teleportation, and in the middle of it should be that clean plate that we took. Now, one of my biggest mistakes of this while I was shooting outside is that I didn't realize that the lighting would change in that short amount of time. So if you take a look at this, there's actually a slight difference between the shadows because the clouds are moving, and all of these things don't really seem super apparent when you're filming. But if you're shooting this and you want to make sure that you have this effect coming out super clean, try to control the lighting as best as you can. It's all good though, because we are After Effects masters over here, and one thing that we can do is actually just rotoscope ourselves out and then put ourselves on top of this clean plate. So yeah, we might be able to make this work with just a bit of color correction and roto brush. Next thing to do is to create a brand new adjustment layer above those layers, and this is where all of those VFX are gonna live. Let's trim this adjustment layer using those same shortcuts as earlier. Alt open bracket trim the beginning and Alt close bracket trim the end. That way we have it just on the exact spot where we want it to be affecting the footage. Next thing to do is apply one of my favorite effects. It's actually an effect I talk about in an earlier video, the best effects for After Effects, as the name suggests. If you guys want to check that out, go ahead, do that on your own time. But right now, we're still becoming super cool with this transition and this teleportation effect. So Liquify is going to let us distort this footage in all sorts of wonky ways. And one of the coolest ways that I like to do this is actually for doing this squeezing, pinching, as if time and space are getting distorted. To apply the Liquify effect, you just go over to distort and then Liquify, and then you have all these different brushes up here in the effects controls panel. We're going to use this one that looks like a circle getting squished. I think it's called the pucker tool. And then we're going to go down to the pucker tool options and change the brush size and the strength so that we're not just clicking forever. If you guys are finding this tutorial easy to follow along so far, why not go ahead and give us a like, because it does a tremendous amount for helping the channel. And hey, this tutorial was completely free, and you know how much YouTube loves those likes. Shoot, I love those likes. While you're at it, why not hit that subscribe button and ding that post notification bell so you don't miss out on any of the super dope stuff that you got planned. Anyways, let's just hop back into making this effect look super dope and impressing all of our friends. Now, again, you guys can play around with this and make the effect however you want to your liking, but I thought this one looked pretty sick. And essentially, I just wanted it to look like time and space was bending to our will. Now, over here as well on the effects controls, you can also change the distortion percentage, which is going to allow you to have the effect either happen stronger or weaker depending on this value. And even better, we have this stopwatch icon right next to it, which is going to let us animate this effect on and off. So let's start at 0% for the distortion strength. Then we're going to hit the stopwatch, which is going to create a brand new keyframe. If you guys have never heard of keyframes before, it's pretty much just a little point that says, hey, be at this exact value at this exact time. And since we're at the beginning of this animation and we hit the stopwatch thing to be at 0% right here at this moment. So now let's go ahead and scrub forward a little bit where I'm leaping into this imaginary portal. And we want to crank that value all the way up so it looks super distorted. And then we're going to scrub forward a little bit more and change that value back down to 0. So it's like this portal opens up and then collapses back in on itself. I'm also going to press U on my keyboard so I can pull up all those keyframes. It's a super handy shortcut that shows every keyframe that you've ever put on a layer. And I can actually readjust the positions of these little diamonds so that the effect looks super smooth. Okay, so that's looking cool. Next thing to do is let's duplicate this adjustment layer by pressing Control D on our keyboard. And then we're just gonna reset this Liquify tool because next we're gonna be animating the landing of this. So let's go ahead and drag that adjustment layer a little bit forward in the timeline to match up with the landing effect. And then to get rid of all those keyframes that we made earlier, I'm gonna just press on the stopwatch icon, which pretty much turns off the keyframing and deletes all the keyframes in that same stroke. So pretty much I'm just gonna be using the same exact techniques that we did for the teleporting in effect as the teleporting out or the landing effect. And this looks pretty cool. Next thing to do is I'm just gonna go ahead and rename these layers to keep it clean so I don't lose my mind whenever I'm trying to figure out what's going on in this, because now we're getting into adding a few more than just 1 or 2 layers. Next thing I want to do is add in a mask because this lighting did not look too perfectly matching. So let's use an ellipse mask and then just drag it around myself, which shouldn't be too hard. In fact, this doesn't actually even have to be super perfect. It could just be kind of rough. Since I move out of the frame of this mask every so often, I want to animate this mask to just roughly follow my position as well. So to do that, we're going to press M on our keyboard and that's going to pull up our mask options. And then I want to go ahead and click on the stopwatch and then just reposition the mask every time that I see myself myself move out of frame. That's just gonna create keyframes every time so that I'm staying within this ellipse mask. That's looking pretty cool, but these edges are super rough, so we can go down to the mask feather properties and increase this value so we get nice soft edges. Oh, that's looking nice and smooth. Next thing I'll do is animate the expansion of this so that by the time that I eventually grab the camera, this mask is pretty much not even relevant. And by now you guys should know how to animate in After Effects by using this stopwatch icon. Okay, cool. So this effect is coming together pretty nicely, but it can look so much better by adding in some additional VFX elements like a Nightcrawler smoke. You know, whenever Nightcrawler and X-Men just teleports from there's all these little smoke effects and particles blasting all over the place. So for this, I'm gonna try out Action Essentials, which is a pack from Video Copilot. But if you guys wanna have way more access to a whole bunch more effects and assets to use in your projects, you can check out Adobe Elements. They have thousands and thousands of resources. And of course, we have a little link down in the description box because every time you guys sign up with Adobe Elements, we get a small kickback that helps out the channel. Aside from helping out the channel, I think it's honestly the best bang for buck because it's like I don't know what the price conversion may be, but it's about like $29 a month, and it gives you not just VFX assets but backgrounds and templates and music options, which to me is just freaking insane. Whereas Action Essentials is like a few $100s and it's like very specific. Oh, we also have another one from Big Films. He is a VFX artist that reached out to us because he makes his own VFX packs. I think he even said he worked on some Hollywood movies. So his assets also look super dope. I will be including a link down in the description. And at the end of this video, I'm actually gonna try this one out using some of those assets just so you guys can get a feeling for like what the different VFX assets could be used for and how they look in making this effect specifically. Okay, so here are the powder hits from Action Essentials. Action Essentials, that's kind of hard for me to say. I used to have a lisp back in the day. All right, guys. So I'm gonna have this powder hit start right underneath this adjustment layer, and also when I'm teleporting in, so like boom, and then we get this nice burst of smoke. Now let's make sure that this back one is scaled a little bit smaller than the one in which I'm in front of the camera a little bit closer. So to do that, I'm just gonna press S on my keyboard to pull up the scale options. That's gonna let me fine tune the scales of these effects. Next thing I'm gonna do is add in a tint effect, which you can find over in color correction tint, or if you're using the plugin FX Console, which by the way guys, the dopest plugin for After Effects, you guys gotta download it. Gives you this cool little pop-up window to where you can just type in any effect and instantly apply it versus going through all these drop downs. So I'm going to be using it here and there, and the shortcut for that is Control Spacebar for me. But guess what guys, you can also change this plugin to open with any sort of shortcut. So that's super cool. Anyways, using this tint effect, you can change the color of the smoke to pretty much any color you want. I think I experimented around with the black color at first to match my outfit, but it still looked kind of cheesy. So I just changed it back to white, and then I messed around with blue and green, but really the options are up to you guys. Have fun with it. There's really no wrong answers with this. Just make sure that you make your effect look signature to your own style and what you actually like. Okay, so next thing that we're gonna do is add a mask to these adjustment layers so that they don't look super harsh when they're coming on. So I'm gonna make a circle mask around this disappearing point, and then I'm gonna go down to the mask options, feather out those edges so it doesn't look so rough. And hey, to get extra nerdy in this project, we can also create a color correction layer, which is just gonna be an adjustment layer renamed to color correction, or CC for short. Next thing I wanna do is add in two super dope effects. We're gonna add in a curves effect, which is gonna let us color correct this a little bit better. And then we're also going to add a glow effect, which is just gonna add some nice lighting to this scene. So for this CC layer, let's make another mask and just have it around the body ever so slightly. And then we're gonna feather that mask as well, because most of the time masks need some feathering. Okay, they're gonna look super harsh if you don't do that. So using those effects that we just applied to that layer, we can adjust the brightness so the scene looks much brighter. And then we can also go down to the glow and change those thresholds and radiuses and intensities so that we get something that looks super beamy and powerful. To animate this on though, I'm just gonna be focusing on that layer in its entirety by pressing P on my keyboard. That's gonna pull up my opacity options. And then we're gonna crank this from 0 to 100 back to 0 again. I'm gonna duplicate that same CC layer and then just apply it over to that teleporting out effect, or the landing part of this footage. And that is looking super cool. Now let's add some camera shake. So we can use that same teleport comp and duplicate it by dragging it from the project panel to this little icon down below, which is a make a new composition icon. It's gonna look like a bunch of little shapes next to each other. And then we're gonna rename this composition to teleport with camera shake for our own sanity. Since I am lazy and I don't wanna do too much work when there does not need to be too much work done, I'm just gonna hop over to Google, type in free camera shake presets for After Effects. And using this link, I actually found something super useful. It actually has a whole bunch of different options. And hey, even cooler, they even have ones from the Deadpool movie. So yeah, that's an option. This one here didn't require me to sign up for anything, so I went ahead with it. Whereas some of the other ones that I started finding, they required a whole sign-in process. And guess what? Not everything needs to be a freaking sign-up process when you guys are giving away free shit. To add in these presets, you want to go over to your After Effects root folder, which you can do so by right-clicking on the icon and then going over to properties and then open file location. Then I'm going to drag in this presets folder over to my After Effects presets folder. Now, by default, this is actually not going to show up inside of this project because I didn't close out of After Effects and reopen it. So the way to get it to show up, to go over to this hamburger menu right here and then click on refresh the presets list. To use this preset, I'm gonna create a brand new null object down here in the timeline. And then I'm gonna click and drag this preset onto it. And the next thing I wanna do is parent this teleportation comp to that null object. And we're gonna start to see it moving nice and smoothly as if someone is filming this scene with a handheld camera instead of propping it up on a fire hydrant. Now, since the edges are getting a little bit cut off here, I can just simply go over to S on my keyboard and scale up this teleportation comp. So even when the camera rotates and moves around the scene, we're still getting a full image the whole time. And then since I don't want this camera shake to happen the whole time, I can press U on my keyboard on that null object and then just go ahead and delete the beginning and end keyframes, or pretty much any keyframes that I don't even need. To test out different camera shakes, I can also just add in multiple nulls and then do the same process over and over and swap between whichever one is getting parented. And hey, I think this one looks nice, but you guys be sure to have fun with it and experiment. I'm thinking this is looking like it is about time to render. But you know what? That, since we are here and it might be useful to test out different VFX elements, I figured why not just go ahead and add in some last minute Envato Elements effects. That way we can compare what looks nicer, just the plain old action essentials from Video Copilot or some of the cool assets that can be downloaded from the Envato Elements library. I'm thinking this magic effect looks pretty cool, and I'm just gonna go ahead and apply it to that scene in the same exact way that I did the action essentials one. So again, we're doing the same exact techniques that we did with the smoke charges by repositioning them, dragging them to the right time in the timeline, and then adding a tint effect so we can change the colors of this. And hey, I'm thinking they look pretty cool, so that was actually well worth it. I think that took my scene from looking pretty novice to something a little bit more advanced. Another last minute touch to make this look even better is to add a quick flash of light to both of these by just creating a brand new solid and adding a gradient ramp to it with white and green to match those same glowy particles, and then also animating the opacity on and off super quickly. And then for the larger effect, it actually flashes all the way up 60%. And because I was extra and just couldn't leave this effect alone, I thought, hey, what if I render this out and all of my friends see it and then they laugh at me and they think, hey, this actually did not look impressive at all. This looked pretty basic. I went ahead and I pre-composed that entire teleporting in and out effect so that I could add in a quick roto brush to them, making sure to move all the attributes to the new composition. Then I double clicked on it and I did a super quick roto of it, and then I made sure to click freeze to lock in all those roto brushed frames. Next thing I did was reposition those roto layers just a little bit below those powder hits, and then I duplicated it and made a copy below that looked a little bit greenish to match that teleportation tint, and all of a sudden I had a really cool outline effect on the landing. I also set the blending mode to screen so that it blended a little bit more with the background. And yeah, I like that idea so much that I did it for both the teleporting in effect and the teleporting out effect. And then we slapped on some last minute light rays with light ray CC, because hey, the last thing I would want is for a potential director or even my friends and family to be like, you suck at After Effects. Okay, so we got that all set. Now let's just go ahead and render this bad boy out. I'm gonna click all the way down here to this blue text, and I'm gonna change my render output to QuickTime and then Apple ProRes 422 LT. If you guys have no idea what that means, don't worry about it because I don't either. I just know that that is a high quality, low file size format that works really well with different video video editing applications, and that's why I use it all the time. So let's take a look at this render and see how dope this came out. Okay, and that's how you do the teleportation effect. Hopefully I didn't just stop recording when I picked up the camera. Bam, okay, that looks freaking cool. Now, as promised, I also wanted to try out the Big Films VFX as well. It's also a pack that is specifically made just for different superpower set of effects. So I really like this kind of Star Trek beaming down effect, and I figured, hey, let's just go ahead and slap this one on in the same exact way. And this is how that render came out. Okay, and that's how you do the teleportation effect. So even though we have this finally rendered out, there's actually a whole bunch more to do in After Effects that can always be tweaked and customized. If you guys are curious about learning more things to do in After Effects, more creators, you guys can go ahead and check out this video that we got here on the channel. It's gonna help you hone in those After Effects skills. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I hope to catch y'all on the next one. Peace.